You're GameStop in 2011. You just had your best year making $7 billion. But wait, there's an extra 2.6 on the books. Where'd you get that? Matter of fact, 15 years straight of extra cash? Publishers take a big cut, leaving you scraps. Big box stores undercut your prices. So where's that money coming from? Why was every publisher after you with pitchforks and torches? Why were you lying to customers? And how did you go from running the world to closing down stores? This is the story of how GameStop used a century-old law to build an empire, and how they won every battle but lost the war. See, in the 80s, home computers were starting to boom, and while today we could download anything we want, people back then had to use floppy disks to use programs or play games. And getting these disks were incredibly inconvenient. Catalogs and conventions were your best bet. Enter Babbage in 1986 in Dallas, Texas, where you could browse discs like you would anything else at a mall. Move a bit north to Minnesota and you had Software, etc. who were doing the same thing. These two groups had around 300 stores in the US by 1993, but they didn't anticipate how fast tech would advance, the creation of Walmart, and the immense pressure to see profits every year. They filed for bankruptcy 2 years later, but in the scraps remained a bit of hope. See, hundreds of miles east, a man named Leonard built his empire off Barnes & Noble, the biggest bookstore chain in the US, and he was noticing an emerging market. The gaming industry was worth $8 billion in the 80s, $45 billion in the 90s, and he was betting it would grow more. With his net worth of almost $800 million at the time, he was about to bet a quarter of it on the remains of Babbage and Software, which he purchased fully in '99 for $215 million and renamed the project GameStop.
One of those things you've been waiting for forever.
Coolest merchandise in the world.
Where folks are lining up right now.
At GameStop, power to the players.
GameStop sold games, but after publishers and distributors take their chunk of a new game, they're left with about $10 to $15. You could try to raise prices, right? Well, not really, because big box stores like Walmart can sell games at a loss because they'll make it back when you buy groceries. Worst of all, November and December alone account for nearly 50% of annual revenue, making the gaming business heavily seasonal. But that didn't stop GameStop from trying literally everything to increase revenue. They expanded into accessories like controllers, memory cards, and strategy guides. They tried different store formats like mall stores, strip centers, and standalone locations. They even tried selling DVDs and random electronics. Nothing seemed to be getting traction in the first year of GameStop. They needed a miracle, something that would completely change the economics of selling games, something their competitors couldn't copy, something that was built inside a cold basement in Minnesota. GameStop had their eyes on a successful company that was using a billion-dollar model protected by a century-old law. David Pomage started it from his Minnesota basement in 1988. By '99, David and his company Funko had perfected the art of selling used games. Now, GameStop wasn't the only company with their eyes on Funko. See, when a customer trades in a game for $10, you sell that game for $30. That customer trades it back after beating it, then you sell it again for $30. That single copy could make hundreds of dollars of profit in its lifetime. But you couldn't just start a used game program, right? See, FuncoLand had spent 12 years building the infrastructure, customer relationships, trading systems, supply chains, pricing algorithms, and customer trust. So Leonard, with a quarter of his net worth tied up with GameStop, did what he does best: start a bidding war to buy all of Funko before anyone else can. GameStop and a mystery company fire shots back to back. $100 million, $110 million, $130 million. GameStop hits the last bid with $161.5 million. GameStop officially owns FuncoLand, all their stores, and their billion-dollar model. But it's also not the last time we'll see that mystery company. So how was this model even legal? Well, it's called the first sale doctrine, a century-old law that says once you buy something, you own it. You can sell it, trade it, give it away, whatever you want. It's yours to do with as you please. But as gaming got even more popular and publishers started putting tens of millions into creating games, GameStop was about to find out if a century-old law could protect them from the wrath of an entire industry. Within 2 years, GameStop's revenue exploded from nearly $750 million in 2001 to over $1.3 billion by 2003. It was almost impossible for a used game to not go through GameStop's process. In addition, they were becoming an icon with midnight releases and community events. But GameStop wasn't satisfied being the biggest store in the US. They wanted the world. In 2005, they made their power move, acquiring EB Games, who had hundreds of stores in Canada and Europe, for $1.4 billion. This was the same company they were in a bidding war with for Funko a couple years ago. GameStop went from roughly 1,800 stores to over 3,800 stores overnight. They were officially using a century-old legal loophole to print billions. Publishers watched them hit a peak of $2.6 billion from used games in a single year in 2011. Every used copy sold was money straight out of the publishers' pockets. But publishers weren't going down without a fight. See, games got increasingly more expensive to make as the years went by. In 2000, Shenmue took $47 million to make and market. Around 2010, MW2 took $50 million to make and $200 million to market. 2020, Cyberpunk took $174 million to make and over $140 to market. The first sale doctrine was actually untouchable, so publishers had to get creative. And thus, the first Trojan horse in gaming was born, one that would make Achilles proud.
Technology gets stronger. What happens when the enemy steals the keys?
See, Dragon Age launched in 2009, and it came with extra DLC that was advertised as free on the box if you used the one-time code that came inside. So if you bought a used copy, you had to cough up an extra 15. So a copy made its way into a GameStop. A customer traded it in, and it was put on the used game shelf. Enter Collins, who bought that used copy only to go home and find that the free DLC wasn't free because the code had already been used. In outrage, he sued GameStop, a class action was filed and GameStop lost. They had to reimburse anyone that bought a used game with missing content, which ended up costing them millions. Mass Effect 2 had extra DLC, Battlefield 2 as well. Games now needed you to pay to play online. EA's Project $10 was making its way through to other publishers, but GameStop's CEO at the time was still riding high. We have not seen any negative impact. Surveys show us that the user who buys used games actually plays a lot less online. We don't know if GameStop was panicking, but by 2010, they started implementing more aggressive quota systems. Employees started lying to customers, telling them new games were out of stock when they weren't. Targeting kids and elderly customers who wouldn't know the difference between new and used, hiding sale prices on new games to push used copies. They were attacking their own customers to maintain their empire. Eventually, those shady moves got exposed in 2017, and they had to rethink their entire strategy. But while GameStop was busy perfecting their con game, the entire gaming landscape was changing. Steam, Xbox Live, and PSN were gaining traction. The iPhone arrived, and mobile gaming was exploding. At the time, it didn't seem like a big deal, but they would come to realize by 2020, 91% of the industry's revenue came from digital downloads. Physical media was becoming obsolete, and with it, the first sale doctrine that built GameStop's empire. Publishers didn't need to fight GameStop anymore because all they had to do was wait for the future to arrive. GameStop posted a record-breaking $673 million loss in 2018, and stores began to close. They were fixated on making their used game model and physical stores work, and they didn't believe GameStop needed to change. Now, GameStop and EB Games aren't what they used to be, and that's okay. With its revolutionary roots of Babbage and software, to complete dominance in the gaming market, to now looking like a shell of itself, it's clear what happens when you refuse to change. Maybe with their new CEO, Ryan Cohen, GameStop can rewrite their story. The brand still has some life left in it, and regardless of outcome, I'm just glad we were all a part of the good old days.